So sometimes I say photographs feed the imagination and sculptures, stones feed the senses. And so this is unique actually, because this is the first time I'm showing photographs in front of a real sculpture. So this image is England 1968. It's a very simple idea, which was I wanted to superimpose my own man-made pattern onto a pre-existing natural pattern. So that's exactly what I did, just by removing the heads of the daisies. The fact that the daisies might have grown back again after a few weeks was neither here nor there. So ephemerality is not really part of the work. It's just a consequence. It's a byproduct. But the main idea is what you see now. I'm going to show you some text works as well as we go along. So some years ago, along in 1995, I had the idea to walk across France, but then I noticed that I noticed that every day dawned completely cloudless. So then I thought it was a much better idea to make the walk about the cloudless. And the cloudlessness, and to end the walk when I saw the first cloud. So that's an example of if something better comes along, I'm open to chance, and I can change my ideas if I have a better idea as I go along. So walk sometimes can suggest completely different ideas from the one I started with. So this is a line in the Himalayas from 1975, from a 25-day walk in Nepal. I never have the intention to make monuments. So this is on the Khumbu Glacier, which is just below the icefall on Everest, and this line would have gradually broken up over some weeks as the glacier moved down the valley. So again, it looks permanent in the photograph, but in fact it's not. So this is an early work in Ireland, on the west of Ireland, in County Clare. And that's the cliffs of Moher in the background. So quite often I make a work. Well, most of the sculptures are made. They're marks of passage, marks of leaving a mark and then moving on. It just so happened that about 20 years later, after making this circle, I happened to I was in this area and I thought I'd check it out, and it was still there, which is quite unusual. Anyway, I just thought that was I realised, I don't think when I started this walk, I didn't realise that I would be keeping pace with the spring as I went northwards. Anyway, that's what happened. So one of the pleasures of me walking in wilderness areas is the camping and the finding a nice camping place, and it has to be out of the wind or near fresh water. And also I like stones. So this work is really just a sort of a combination and a celebration of the things that I enjoy doing, camping and making circles of stones. All the stones that you see in all of these sculptures are they're the stones of the place. So I'm not bringing anything to the place that I didn't find there. So I think that's one of the longest continuous walks. So I'm just working on a new book at the moment called Many Rivers to Cross. So my work has many themes. So you've seen some pictures of stones, but water is also very important. Drinking, rivers, bouncing stones across rivers. Dusty Boots line from some time I've spent in the Sahara. So this area, this is in the Hogar Mountains, which are near Tamanrasset. And I thought, I had a rudimentary map, and it showed me one place that was a permanent spring in the mountains where I could get water. But as the plane was coming into land, I noticed little pools of water, and by chance it had rained for the first time in like 5 years. Like 1 week before I arrived. So I was able to make this, it gave me a lot more freedom to walk in this very dry area. And so every day the pools of water got smaller and smaller. And I think on the 6th day, that was the last pool of water that dried up, and that was the end of the walk. Anyway, so this is really just my accumulated footprints. Sometimes on a wilderness walk, I will make another type of walking, which is a ritualized kind of walking, which is, as you can see here, it's just walking continuously up and down in a straight line until I've made my own path, going nowhere. I quite like the idea of going nowhere as well as going somewhere. So after many years of making walks which are just measured in days, I realised that I could also measure a walk by the tides, by the moon. So in a way, as the tides go around the British Isles, it's a sort of like a clock which is not synchronised. So as you can see, it's when it's low tide on one side of the country, it's high tide on the other side. So that's another a work that I made on that time in the Sahara. You might be noticing that you're seeing quite a few circles in my work, and the idea is that a circle is a perfect platonic form, but because they're each made in a completely different place, every circle is completely different. Like every fingerprint is different, every footprint is different. So something else I've said about my work is that it's not really about the circle, it's about the whole place. So the fact that I was able to stand in the place I took the photograph and line it up with that beautiful volcanic rock plug is all part of the way that you can receive that work. So I'm an opportunist. So if I can make a beautiful image of with my circle in conjunction with something on the horizon, I will I'll use that opportunity. This is one of my favourite text works. It's sort of like it's like a balance between something quite difficult, walking for 24 hours, and then reversing everything and doing it something quite easy. So one idea about a lot of the walks are about measuring myself against the world, or measuring how many miles it is between a moonrise to a sunrise, for example. So I can utilize a lot of cosmic events in my work as well, like solstices and total eclipses, all that stuff. It's all usable. So in a way, that's a kind of a symmetry as well. There's a lot of symmetry in my work. So I had a couple of wonderful weeks in India many years ago. So this is me working on in a paddy field where they'd harvested the paddy, and then they'd so all this was just the white was the chaff that was lying around. And we were guests with a very famous tribal artist called Jivya Soma Mache, very distinguished artist, and we were staying on. So it was staying on his tribal land in Maharashtra. So again, I'm just using the chaff that was just lying around, and then one of the baskets that they probably used to pick up the dung from the cattle for their fuel. So this is another walk about an idea, and the idea in this one is the idea of scale. So I'm walking from the huge, great stones in in Brittany, which are like sort of like Stonehenge or something. Yeah, they're equivalent to Stonehenge, and then the particle accelerator in CERN in between France and Switzerland. Big scale to small scale. So this is from 2 weeks in the Karoo in South Africa. So one day on this walk, there was an enormous storm came out of nowhere, and there was a huge flash flood. So this whole area was just filled up with water up to my waist. So I'm not showing it to you, but I also made a work about that as well. So like I say, everything is kind of usable when you're out in the world. And you only make art by walking. Or you only make art by stones. One reason I use stone, I've often said, is that stones are what the world is made of, which means that I can make my work anywhere in the world I happen to be. Off the cuff, by chance. So I quite like this one as well. So that's a sort of like a balance between something that starts off quite easily, walking 1 mile and 1 mile, 2 miles, but then accumulates. So walking 89 miles in one day is quite difficult, or more difficult than the first day. So that's a walk about a very famous mathematical sequence and pattern. So that was he was a Renaissance, Italian Renaissance mathematician. There's a great walk I did in the Andes, and that's in Argentina. So it's called Aconcagua Circle because it's lined up with that. The peak on the horizon is Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain in South America, I think. So that's a text work I made during that same walk. So I don't consider my text works poetry in any way, really, although maybe it's an academic point, but it's just another way of working. So sometimes I can use stones and sometimes I can use words. So the text work started in the early days. I would make a line in Iceland or something. I'd just say a line in Iceland, and then I began to realise that the titles were became quite important. In other words, looking at a photograph without a title is different from looking at a photograph with a title. So then I realised that words could be usable. So this is I made a road trip with Denise in Western China some years ago, and there are all these stones lying on the side of near the side of the road. So I just put the stones in the road. Road stone line. So that guy probably didn't even notice them. It quite often happens that I make my work in sometimes remote places, but often there's local people around. Like in Mexico, there could be Indians or anything, anyone. And I might be taking a picture of a circle of stones, and I'll walk right by and not not see the circle. Or I like the idea that local people might see a work of mine and maybe not, they'll see it as a circle of stones but not identify it as a work of art. So I'm sort of interested in all the different ways I can put art into the world, as well as, here in this gallery. So there's a circle of stones in front of you. And then there's those stones are still in China somewhere. But unrecognisable as a work of art as you see it in the picture. So I love all this kind of freedom to work in all these different ways. Another thing to say about the text works is that sometimes I've made a walk where I pick up a stone and carry it forward to the next day and then swap it for another stone. So it's from day to day, from stone to stone, which is absolutely a sculpture, but it would make no sense to try and record it as a photograph. So it makes more sense to use a text work to tell the story of a sculpture. So that's just a really nice, for me anyway, it's from crow to crow to crow to crow. So words are important quite often. And the naming of places. So this is a circle in Antarctica, which is a fantastic trip I made, which I had to go with a guide because it's actually quite dangerous. Because there's hidden crevasses and. So the first thing I had to do was to learn how to ski a bit, because we pulled. It was just me and Oscar, and we were pulling sledges, like big things. We had all our kit on sledges, and but one of the things that we had was like snow shovels, so that if it was windy, we could. And the snow is so it's like polystyrene. It's completely dry. So with a shovel, you can cut out blocks very fast and make a windbreak in front of the tent. So I just took advantage of having this snow shovel and cut out these blocks of snow to make the circle. So that's the only lifeless place I've been to on the planet. It really is completely lifeless. It was amazing going there. So the actual, I flew from the tip of South America, and we landed on a on a glacier actually. So the actual landing strip was actually moving in like about 20 yards every year, and you have to land very carefully because you can't put your brakes on because you're landing on ice. So it's a very, very long runway. Anyway, everything about that trip was amazing. So as you can probably tell, there's many I've been all over the world and done all these amazing walks and everything. So there's lots of backstory in my life. So what you see in my work is really is what I've taken out of everything that happens to me, and just I'm showing you what really interests me, which is a circle of stones or a circle of snow or some idea about a walk. So all that's about choice, really. So I'm showing you what the things I love to do and to show you. So Van Gogh was one of my sort of heroes when I was at school. So at the end of the walk, it really was a starry night over the Rhone, which is one of his famous paintings. But unfortunately, the yellow house is not there anymore. I think it was even bombed by the British in the war or something. Ridiculous. So this is a line of red slate from Vermont in America. So this is on the land of a big, rich collector. So this is one way I make my money, is to people do buy my work sometimes if they got enough land. Looks like we. So one thing to say about these works is that the stones are just placed haphazardly, and this is about the third time I've made this work. So every time I make it, the work looks the same, but also every time every stone is in a different place. So as long as I follow the same procedure, keep to the same density, the same length and everything. So my work is not like a traditional sculpture, or even like something like this circle here. Every time this circle is made, every stone can be in a different place. So it's not like an object, like this microphone, that's the same all the time. So this is another work that this guy has of mine. That's Cornish slate, this time, from Delabole in Cornwall. More red slate. Looks like we're going to end right on the button. So this is from a famous vineyard in the south of France, which is sort of like an art. This is like a chateau. So they're river stones. So this is the last one. So some years ago, I was looking at a map of Olympus, and I noticed there's one part of Olympus is called the Plateau of the Muses, and I thought, what an amazing place to be called, and what a fantastic location for me to make a work. So, like about 3 weeks ago, I went to Olympus and made this circle on that plateau. And that's it. So we can, that's exactly how sort of feel, isn't it? Yeah. Fine, lovely, yeah. I'm going to drive off into the sunset after this.
So, who has the first question for Richard?
Probably a bit of a Philistine question, I'm afraid, but some of your art, you're saying, I think one of Vermont, so you make your money by going back and adding a bit, tweaking a bit, but other art, like there was in Tate,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
blown away the next hour.
Yeah.
Doesn't that bother you?
No, like I said, that's just the way of the world. You know, some things last and some things get blown away.
Yeah.
It's normal. So I'm a great realist. You know, I work with the world in all its permanence and impermanence. But just on a sort of practical note, like all the photographs in the show here are they are just like unique prints. So I've sold them. So that's one way I make my money, is to make photographs with my handwritten titles on.
For your memory, so you can remember what you've done as well, presumably. So
One reason to take photographs is to show you all, anyone in the world, you know, right down through history, what I've done. There'd be no point in me making these beautiful works all around the world without telling anyone. So, so the camera has a very useful function. I mean, I'm not a photographer at all, but I couldn't. It's a very necessary tool for me. Yeah.
I think art historically, that's one of the big contributions you made, wasn't it, in challenging the art world, that it couldn't be a commodity. So once you've made it.
Yes, I mean, I didn't really have any. I wasn't engaged in all that sort of theoretical discussion, but I definitely felt that in the mid-60s that art was a bit highbrow. You know, it was like based in people working in studios and everything. And I realised that there was a whole world out there that was had the potential, to be in. And then when after I made my first, the line Made by Walking, I realised that a journey could also be a work of art. So then that introduced the idea of time and distance into a work of art. So this is like three-dimensional, but then a journey. Time is the fourth dimension. So when I was at St Martin's, one of my I did a cycling sculpture where I loaded various bits of a sculpture on my bicycle, and I cycled for about 3 days around north of London, and left one piece of the sculpture in all different places. So every piece of the work was out of sight of the last piece. So that really introduced the whole idea that you could I could bring enormous space into a work of art just by cycling.
When you're planning a walk, obviously, as you mentioned, the time and the consideration as to where you're going, what's up with it. But when it comes to making the act of making the artwork, do you act and then think afterwards, or do you think a lot about it and then act?
No, it's well, the sculptures along the way are they're made very spontaneously. They're just I happen to be in a nice place that has lots of interesting stones, or it might have a wonderful horizon, or I'm in a good mood, or I've just had a nice meal, or there's many factors that come into it. But basically, it's just like, as this show says, it's like being in the moment, and the sculptures are made spontaneously in that moment. And then I'll take a photograph, and then put my rucksack back on, move on the walk, and never go back to that place again. Yeah.
I was interested that you said that your textbook isn't really poetry.
Yeah.
Because, there's some coming up there on the screen now. It does seem, on the screen you can't see it.
Oh yeah.
To me, it does feel like poetry.
Well, that's okay. Whatever it feels like to you, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. It's just that I don't. It's a bit academic. No, it's like I say, they're equivalents to stones, words. But like I said, I explained, it's just they're a very practical way. I can tell a story of a sculpture, or I can present an idea like the megalithic to subatomic. Because I love simplicity as well. My work is very classical in some ways.
Yes. What inspires you to pick places like Bolivia to make your piece of work, Kickstones in Bolivia?
Oh yeah, well, there's many different types of reasons for going to all different places down the whole 50, 60 years I've been working. But So I got a friend, Hamish Fulton, who's also a walking artist, and we've made many walks together. So in the old days, we would like meet up at the National Geographic Society near the Albert Hall, and we get all these maps out. And so we had a big map of Bolivia, and it was completely empty part of Bolivia. And then there was one railway line going across this area, and the only writing on the map was, it just said Rocky, and there was one railway station in the middle of this place. So we thought, so 2 months later, we actually got off the train, at midnight. We were only 2 people to get off that train in that on that station, and so when we woke up in the morning, we discovered what that word Rocky meant, although back in England, and it was this beautiful like volcanic plain. So that's just a stupid example of anything can expire, and I do many walks to places I know very well, but then I can also go to places that I have no idea what I'm going to find there. Like I had no maps of when I went to the Sahara, or just at one very primitive map that just said that had that one place for a spring.
So I was just thinking about your experience in Olympus more recently.
Yeah.
What's it like to walk away from something that you've finished? But how do you know I've definitely finished? I'm going to walk away. Do you sometimes want to go back?
No, I don't. I just if I'm happy with the way it looks, just.
And does it feature in your dreams later or anything, or is it just it's gone?
It doesn't feature in my dreams, but that's an interesting. I have my best dreams when I'm on my walks, in a tent, sleeping on stones or in very uncomfortable conditions. It's like being in the cinema all night. So maybe all this walking and being in this beautiful places, it sort of triggers something in the brain that makes you dream.
I went and visited Richard when he was making a work at Hatton-Brown
Oh yeah.
last month, and I'm sure you all know that amazing estate. And you showed me where you'd slept, and
It was just convenient. When I was there's nowhere for me to stay anyway, so I just took my tent down and camped by my line.
That's an incredible new work, actually, if you want to sort of go past it. One of the other conversations we had was about the work that you made during lockdown.
Oh yeah.
Bristol.
Yeah.
Those new works. Could you tell us a little bit about those?
I'm always working, so or you might say I'm never working. It's just so I did. So every day there was plenty of opportunities to walk from where I live, because I live in the countryside, so lots of country lanes and fields, and so.
That's what's been lovely for us, is sharing that with audiences, that when they're out on a walk, that they can employ some of your processes.
Yes, or they make up their own. I don't. The last thing I want to do I don't really want people. I don't want followers. I don't want people to copy me. I mean, they can if they want, but it's not the idea. I don't want followers. I don't want.
When people think of you as quite a romantic artist.
Well, the idea of romantic. I think obviously compared to an artist who works in a city. Most artists are urban artists. Most artists work in cities. So compared to like Andy Warhol or Joseph Beuys or Lucian Freud, just to be in the landscape is a kind of a romantic idea. But I don't feel any connection with the romantic movement of like Wordsworth and. And I'm sure farmers don't feel romantic. They don't feel, it's bloody hard work being a farmer. Even though they live in this beautiful landscape and.
Do we have any farmers here?
So once I was doing early in the late 60s, I was doing a walk. I was climbing over it. I was walking through a hedge or something, and I met the farmer, and he seemed to realise that I wasn't a tourist, and he said, "God, bloody work, isn't it?" so he kind of seemed appreciating that I wasn't just an idle tourist. Yeah, Dartmoor is the local wilderness place to where I live in Bristol. So, sure, yeah. Well, we're in Devon now, aren't we? Yeah.
What is it about Dartmoor?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, I knew it from my childhood because my grandparents lived in Bevy Tracy, and then he moved to Morton Hampstead, and so I always had family holidays near the moor. But it's relatively, it's almost like a sort of undulating plateau. It's fairly flat, so it lends itself very well to walking in straight lines or walking in perfect circles. In other words, I can do certain works on Dartmoor that I couldn't do in the Scottish Highlands, which has cliffs and stuff. So it's a combination of being very practical for my purposes, and also very beautiful, and almost no one around.
Sorry, one question. Is there anywhere else in the world that you haven't travelled to that you would really love?
Oh, many places. It's a ridiculous idea to think that I've been everywhere. I've barely touched.
Where would you most want to go to next?
I'm not ticking places off, but so quite. I mean, I like going back to well-known, well-loved places just as much as I like going to new places. That is sort of like very complementary. But I suppose the one thing that I'm attracted to very empty, stony landscapes, like the west of Ireland or Bolivia. So I haven't walked much in jungles. So maybe I'd like to go into places like Borneo or Vietnam. About 3 or 4 years ago, I did go to the Amazon for the first time, which is great, interesting. It's hard to walk a straight line in the jungle. I keep a rudimentary diary on long walks, but that's really just to sort of just to remind me what I have for breakfast. They're not literary diaries. Or sometimes, especially on the Dartmoor walks, I just write things in the margin of the map. Yeah.
Do you read?
No, not on a walk. No, because books are too heavy. It's ridiculous to take a book. No. I'm very...
Question? Well, you mentioned dreams being quite vivid on walks.
Yeah.
It brings to mind dream walking in Aboriginals. So
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yes, I have. I haven't walked with the Aborigines, but I've met some, yeah, I've read that book as well. The songlines. I think that was his best book.
And is it important to be solitary?
It's not. I'm not always. Yes, most of my walks I do on my own, but that's not to say that I meet interesting people along the way. So. So quite often, meeting people at various points along a walk can be, they can be life-saving, or they can tell you what's a dangerous route and what's So I've got two anecdotes. So on that walk in '75 in Nepal, we were me and Hamish were in a little cafe in Namche Bazaar, just before Everest, and then they seemed to be like sort of tidying the tables up, and then Edmund Hillary came in and just sat down next to me and had a cup of coffee. So then I don't know if you know the famous lines in Nazca in Peru. So in 1972, we met Maria Reich, who was the woman who mapped and measured all those incredible lines in the desert. So that was another memorable experience, and a very interesting person to meet on our walk. So we actually slept. We all, like the three of us, slept in one of the lines. Head to toe, head to toe, head to toe.
It's interesting though that the names of the people that you've met don't feature in your work, or that I've seen.
No, because it's a good point that people are really not the subject of my work. If I was a writer, I'd be telling you lovely stories about all these anecdotal happenings. But so, like I said in the talk, what you see in my work is what interests me to show you, and what I've done.
What our audiences have really liked, though, is in the work, the Dartmoor work that we have upstairs from '72, where you talk about the song in your head. So you give.
Yeah. Well, is that a Dartmoor work? I don't know which one it. Oh yeah.
You talk about Karina.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah, the Bob Dylan one, yeah. Yeah, so music is really very important in my like many people, that's the soundtrack of my life. So I love music, and so I did a walk in Ireland once, which I was thinking about one piece of music every day. So it could have been like a Johnny Cash or a Jimmy Rogers or Bob Dylan or something. It was called walking music.
I really like that, 'cause it just feels, it really does make you imagine you.
Yeah. Well, I think music is very emotional. It's probably the most emotional feel-good art form. But I feel very close to music in that sense. That I feel that my work is has that sort of feel-good emotional, like rock and roll. It's just that's what it is, really. Just another form of rock and roll, just without the roll, just the rocks. I think one thing that has been a sort of a good idea in my work is that I like the idea of making something from nothing. It's not completely nothing, but it comes very close to being. It's a sort of Zen idea of everything pared down to essentials. Well, my friend Carl Andre, he said, the guy who made the bricks and everything. He's a very good friend. He was one of the first supporters of my work in the '70s, '60s. And so Carl said, art is what we do and culture is what is done to us. So I think all artists, they start out, I just wanted to be an artist to make art, ending up here giving a talk, being in the Tate gallery. It's not part of my plan. It's just something that happens. So after a while, after many years, I realised I am, like it or not, I'm part of art history. And I have all my own history on my back as well. So in some ways I have to pay a lot more attention now to what I do and how I put my work in the world, because I have to be more responsible. When I was a young artist, I did things without thinking. It was intuitive, and
It worked
Yeah, it did, yeah. I've been lucky, yeah. Hope you like my little house.
Yeah, this is the film. We'll turn up the volume. There's 3 films from the Tate on Richard's practice that go all the way back to the 60s, actually. So we'll keep that rolling so you can have a look around the cabin. And do keep in touch with us. The exhibition's on until the 31st of October, and we're running tours by the amazing Sarah and Rachel, Thursday, Fridays and Saturdays. So do book on and come and see us again. Thank you. Thank you, Victor.
Hats on.